There are signs you can't see with your eyes, but they scream in silence. They're like invisible cracks in a wall that seems solid, until one day, without warning, it all comes crashing down. Most people prefer not to look, not to ask, not to feel uncomfortable. But ignoring these signs is turning your back on someone who might be living their final days unnoticed. Today I'm going to show you those signs, 9 behaviors, gestures, and attitudes we often overlook, but that may signal an elderly person is going through their last year of life. It won't be easy to hear, and it might even hurt to recognize them in someone close to you, but it's necessary, because the greatest act of love you can offer is opening your eyes before it's too late. Stay with me until the end, because the last sign won't just change how you see others, it will change how you live your own time. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. Let's begin. Have you ever felt like someone isn't really looking at you anymore, but rather looking through you, as if their attention is somewhere else, in another time, another place? It's a different kind of gaze, dimmed, as if there's not much left to say. Let me tell you something you might not want to hear. That gaze isn't always random. That gaze might be the first sign that an elderly person is in their final year and no one dares to acknowledge it. Today, I want you to focus all your attention on this first point, the gaze that slowly fades. It's not just about a simple loss of sparkle in the eyes, like we often think. It's something much deeper, more painful, and if you know how to read it, far more revealing, because the eyes don't just reflect the health of the body, but also the will of the soul, and when that will starts to give in, the body soon follows. I remember my grandfather, a strong man, one of those who rarely complained, who worked the land until he was 75 without ever lowering his head. But a year before he passed, something in his gaze shifted. That spark he used to have when talking about his fields, his animals, his youth, it was gone. He was still present, yes, but it felt like he was looking from far away, as if the movie of his life was ending and he was just watching the credits roll. None of us wanted to admit it. We preferred to say he was tired, that age takes its toll. But the truth is, he was already saying goodbye, and we just didn't know how to see it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And when those thoughts stop reaching toward the future, when the mind only walks paths of the past, the gaze changes too. It becomes nostalgic, resigned. It stops searching for what's to come and only lingers on what's been. But here's the hard part. The part not everyone wants to face. Many times that dimmed gaze doesn't appear because death has already knocked, but because the person feels they no longer have a reason to stay. Their time, their connections, their purpose, they're already gone before they are. It's a sign, yes, but it's also a call. Because as long as that person is still here, you and I have the chance, the responsibility, to reignite that spark. And no, I'm not telling you that you can stop the inevitable. We all have our day marked. But I'm telling you that you can make sure their last days aren't an empty wait, but a meaningful closing, with purpose, with company. Jesus himself, in his final hours, looked at those around him with compassion and strength. He didn't lower his gaze or allow his spirit to fade before its time. That steady gaze, even in darkness, reflects someone who knows who they are and why they're here, until the very last breath. So let me ask you directly, who have you seen lately with that distant gaze, like they're already somewhere else? And what are you doing to give them a reason, a word, a moment, to remind them they're still alive? Don't ignore what their eyes are already telling you, because maybe death hasn't arrived yet. But abandonment has, and that abandonment, my friend, is deadlier than any illness. We've talked about that fading gaze, those eyes that no longer look toward tomorrow, and it's impossible not to ask, what leads someone to disconnect from the world like that? It's not always illness, nor old age itself. Often, it's something more subtle, yet just as devastating. We've reached the second key point of this video: silent isolation. This isn't the kind of solitude one seeks willingly to reflect or rest. No, this is isolation that begins as a whisper and ends up as a wall. At first, maybe they stop answering a few calls. Then they turn down visits, postpone plans, prefer to stay home in their own world. Little by little, without anyone really noticing, they start retreating from social life, closing the doors one by one. The cause isn't always obvious to those around them, but if you look closely, you'll see that behind that isolation lies something deeper: the feeling of no longer belonging, of no longer being needed, of the world spinning on without them. And you know what happens when a person starts to feel unseen and unvalued? Their own sense of self begins to wither. Abandonment, whether real or perceived, weighs heavier than any physical ailment. Stoicism teaches us that we can't control what the world gives or takes away, but we do control how we respond to it. And here's the problem: many elderly people, faced with the pain of feeling ignored or useless, start handing over control to discouragement. They shut themselves away because they feel there's no longer a place for them out there. And without realizing it, they reinforce that belief. The more they isolate, the less people reach out. The less people reach out, the more alone they feel. Isolation doesn't just affect the mind, it wears down the body. Health begins to suffer. Sleep worsens, appetite fades, movement decreases, self-care slips away. Everything that once gave them structure and purpose crumbles in the silence. And this is where faith can waver too, because one starts to wonder if they still have a place in the divine plan, if maybe even God has forgotten them. But let me tell you something as bluntly as I always do. God doesn't forget. It's people who forget: children, friends, family, and sometimes even ourselves. Loneliness isn't always a sentence imposed by others. Sometimes it's a prison we help build ourselves, brick by brick, when we let discouragement dictate our days. Seneca said that a wise man is never alone because he always carries his thoughts and his purpose with him. But that doesn't appear by magic. It takes choice. It takes action, even when you don't feel like it. It takes opening the door, not to wait for someone else to come in, but to step outside yourself, even if it's just to feel the sun, to exchange a word with a neighbor, to remind yourself you're still here. So I want you to think about this. Who do you know that's slowly been shutting themselves away, not answering, preferring silence? Maybe it's you. And if it is, let me tell you plainly, don't wait for life to come looking for you. You take the first step. Because every day you let isolation win, you're giving up ground, letting the shadow creep in. Don't ignore this second symptom. Loneliness doesn't kill suddenly, but it wears down the soul until it goes dark. And you weren't made for that. Don't let it happen. So far, we've seen how the fading gaze and silent isolation can be devastating signs that many prefer to ignore. But there's something else, something that almost always accompanies those two symptoms, and, if left unchecked, speeds up that inner decline even more. We've reached the third key point of this video: a drastic change in appetite. You might think it's just a quirk, a logical consequence of aging, but it's not. Stopping eating, eating less, or losing interest in food isn't always about physical health. More often than not, it's a clear sign that the person has stopped finding meaning, that their desire to hold on to this world is slipping away. When the soul loses its hunger for life, the body shows it without hesitation. And here's the reflection we can't avoid. Marcus Aurelius said the body is like a temple. It should be cared for, but never idolized. Yet neglecting the body doesn't always stem from ignorance. It often comes from discouragement. What's the point of eating if you feel like your role is already over? That's the silent logic that creeps into the mind of someone who's quietly let go of the rope. Eating stops being an act of pleasure or necessity and becomes an afterthought. But let me tell you this. Just as lack of appetite can be a sign, it can also be a turning point if we act in time. The strategy I want to offer you here is simple in appearance, but powerful in effect. Bring ritual back to meals. I'm not just talking about what's on the plate, I'm talking about turning every meal into a mindful, meaningful moment. Eating should stop being mechanical and start serving as a reminder that you're still here, that life is still running through your veins. A well-prepared cup of coffee, a meal shared with even one other person, or a simple lunch where you pause to be thankful for each bite. Seneca said it's not abundance that makes a man happy, but the attention he gives to each thing, and that applies perfectly here. Let me tell you about a woman I met at one of our gatherings. Karen, 74, widowed, her children far away, and little desire to leave the house. She had stopped eating well, just picking at food without interest. But one day, she made a radically simple decision. Every afternoon, she would prepare herself a snack as if she were expecting company, even if it was just for herself. She set the table, took out a nice cup, lit a candle. The result? It wasn't just that she started eating better, she slowly regained the desire to care for herself. Because when you make food an act of presence, you remind both your body and soul that they're still worthy of care. Now I invite you to put this into practice too. Don't wait until you've completely lost your appetite to react. Today, turn one meal into a mindful moment. It doesn't matter if you're alone or with others. What matters is how you do it and with what intention. If these reflections are resonating with you, don't forget to subscribe and hit like. Here at the Stoic Garden, we're building a community that doesn't shy away from the truth, that faces life with strength and purpose. Let me know in the comments what country you're listening from and write the phrase, "I choose to care for myself," so I know you're committed to your well-being. Stick around. There are still crucial signs left to uncover, and I promise you, the last one will reveal a truth very few dare to face. Let's keep going. In the previous chapter, we talked about appetite, how that quiet loss of interest in food is often a reflection of a mind that no longer hungers for life. But there's a symptom that goes even deeper, one that affects vital energy itself, even when it's not visible on the surface. Now we're moving into the fourth point, and I'm sure you've seen it more than once without fully recognizing it: the fatigue that doesn't rest. I'm not talking about physical tiredness after a long day or the normal aches that come with age. I mean that constant, heavy exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to relieve. A kind of fog that settles over the days where even the smallest task feels like an impossible mountain to climb. This fatigue doesn't come solely from physical wear. Its roots are internal, in the mind that no longer finds meaning, in the spirit starting to disconnect from the will to live. The common mistake here is believing this tiredness is inevitable, that it's just a natural part of growing old, that there's nothing to be done. That's the trap. A trap society feeds constantly. It's normal to be exhausted, you've done enough. At this age, all that's left is to rest and wait. And without realizing it, we accept that idea as a sentence, as if it were some invisible command pushing us to give in before our time. But what no one tells you is that this kind of fatigue has less to do with age and more to do with emotional abandonment, the loss of purpose, and the weight of unresolved worries. Stoic philosophy warns us about this danger. Epictetus taught that it's not things themselves that wear us out, but the opinions we have about them. When each day is faced without direction, when your thoughts spin endlessly between the past you can't change and the future you're afraid to face, the soul wears thin, and with it, the body. It's not that you don't have strength, it's that your strength is being consumed by the internal battle, by accumulated resentment, by silent anxiety about what may or may not come. This fatigue is a silent thief. It steals your motivation to get up early, to go for a walk, to make a phone call, to read a book. And every time you give in to that exhaustion without questioning it, you surrender another piece of your autonomy. You end up depending on others not just to move, but to feel any spark of life at all. The mistake is in resigning, lowering your arms, and accepting that your energy no longer belongs to you, as if it's something taken away without remedy. But here's where I'll tell you something not everyone is willing to accept. This fatigue can be challenged, not with miracle pills or empty speeches, but with a profound shift in how you choose to approach your days. Marcus Aurelius said that each morning we should ask ourselves, what good can I do today? And that simple question has the power to shift everything. Because when you decide there is something, however small, worth your effort, the fatigue loses its grip. It doesn't vanish completely, but it stops ruling you. The soul needs direction just as much as the body needs rest. Without it, both wither. So next time you feel that heavy exhaustion, don't just ask how you can rest more. Ask yourself what thought, what worry, what resignation you're carrying that you don't need to, because it's not age that's tiring you. It's the lack of purpose, and as long as you breathe, you still have the choice to reclaim it. After talking about that unshakable fatigue, the exhaustion that doesn't come from the body but from the soul, it's inevitable to notice how that wear begins to show up in other areas. Not just in physical energy, but in dignity, in the way one presents themselves to the world. This brings us to the fifth key point of this video, the abandonment of personal care. Many people think that letting yourself go, neglecting hygiene, dressing any which way, or living in a messy environment is harmless, just part of aging, or simply the result of wanting comfort. But it's not. It's much more serious than that. When an older person stops taking care of themselves, they're sending a powerful message, not just to others, but to themselves. I don't care anymore. And believe me, once that thought takes root, it's like a crack that grows quickly and spreads to every corner of life. The problem is, this neglect doesn't show up overnight. It starts subtly. One day, you skip brushing your hair, another day you put off showering, then you let dust collect, dishes pile up, until the mirror reflects a version of yourself you barely recognize. And each small act of neglect feeds a quiet but destructive idea that you're no longer worth the effort, that no one is watching, that there's no reason to keep showing up as your best self. The consequences don't take long to appear. The lack of personal care leads to a loss of respect, not just from others, but from yourself. Family starts to see you as a burden, as someone who's lost interest in themselves, and over time, that perception shapes how they treat you. Dependency increases, frustration grows, because there's no worse feeling than believing you've lost control over your life, your space, your body. But let me be blunt. This pattern can be broken as long as you decide, without excuses or hesitation, that your self-respect doesn't depend on anyone else. There are no quick fixes here, no empty promises. I'm not going to tell you that a new outfit or a single shower will magically bring your vitality back. What I will tell you is this. Every time you choose to get up, to clean yourself up, to put your surroundings in order, you're making a silent but powerful statement. I'm still here, I still matter, I'm still in charge of my life, still in. The Stoics spoke of self-mastery, of control over what we can actually govern. And this is an area where no one has more power than you. It doesn't matter if you no longer have the strength you once did, or if the days feel repetitive. Your dignity is reflected in how you choose to present yourself to the world, even when it seems like no one's watching. Because God is watching. And what He sees isn't just your appearance, but the respect you show for the life He's still entrusted to you. So today I ask you, which version of yourself are you showing? The one slowly giving up, or the one who decides, even through small gestures, to hold on to dignity until the very last day? No one can make that choice for you. But I can promise you this: every act of care, every bit of effort you put into yourself and your space is an act of resistance, an act of self-love. And that kind of strength never ages. After talking about personal neglect, the kind of disregard that not only affects your appearance but slowly dismantles your dignity, it's time to go even deeper. Because what starts with a lack of external care eventually takes root in the mind, shaping how one views the life still ahead. Now we've arrived at the sixth key point of this video, and it's one of the most dangerous: losing interest in the near future. I want you to pause for a moment and picture something with me. Imagine that tomorrow someone comes up to you and asks, "What plans do you have for next week?" What would you say? Would you answer that you don't know? That it doesn't matter? That you've got nothing lined up? Think carefully about that response, because that indifference toward the future, that absence of plans, isn't just a symptom of calm or contentment. It's a clear sign that you've let go of the wheel of your own life. When you have no expectations, big or small, when you're not even curious about what you'll be doing a few days from now, it means that somewhere in your mind, you've started to give up. This is where the trap sets in without you noticing. You begin by telling yourself it's better not to make plans, so you don't complicate things, don't get disappointed, so you can just live day by day. But behind those words lies something far more corrosive: the quiet belief that there's nothing interesting left to experience, that time has nothing new to offer you. And that thought is pure poison, because it kills hope without making a sound. Marcus Aurelius warned that the soul needs a target, a purpose to keep it awake. Without one, it becomes like a caged animal, pacing the same loop every day. The problem with losing interest in the future is that you condemn yourself to relive the same day over and over. No surprises, no challenges, no joy. And it doesn't just wear you down internally, it strains the relationships around you. People stop reaching out because they already know what your answer will be. I don't know. I can't. I don't want to. It's a silent chain that ends up locking you in loneliness, not because others abandoned you, but because you stopped opening the door. But let me tell you something plainly. As long as you're breathing, you still have the ability to project something forward. It doesn't matter if it's something small, a short trip, a visit, learning something new, planting a seed, literal or figurative. What matters is that you don't allow your mind to rust by only looking backward. God didn't put you here to live as if you're already gone. Faith and philosophy meet at one clear point. The person who loses interest in tomorrow loses control of today. So I want you to ask yourself with total honesty, when was the last time you looked forward to something? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, don't avoid it. Face it head on. Because the real danger isn't that life runs out, it's that you decide to stop living it before it's over. And that, you can still change. Everything we've covered so far is tied together by one invisible thread: silent surrender. That surrender begins with a fading gaze, continues with isolation, the loss of appetite, the constant fatigue, the neglect of one's own body, and finally settles into indifference toward the future. But here, in this seventh point, we arrive at the most subtle yet devastating symptom: conversations filled with quiet goodbyes. You might not notice it at first. It's in the small phrases, the offhand comments. Who knows how much time I've got left? I've lived enough. At this stage, nothing really matters. They don't always sound sad. Sometimes they're wrapped in a calm, resigned tone, as if the person saying them has already accepted their time is almost up. But don't be fooled. Behind every one of those phrases is something much deeper, a silent attempt to say goodbye without having to ask for permission. These kinds of conversations are the final reflection of a mind that has stopped fighting for itself. It's not drama, it's resignation. It's the feeling that there's nothing left to say, nothing left to build, nothing left to look forward to. And the problem isn't just that the person says these things, it's that those around them often don't know how to respond. They prefer to change the subject, ignore the weight of the words, or worse, get used to hearing them and do nothing. But you, who are still here, who've made it this far, you can't afford that luxury. Because every time those phrases slip by without someone challenging them, without someone looking the person in the eye and saying, "No, it's not time to say goodbye yet," it reinforces the idea that life has already ended. And trust me, that is a dangerous lie. Transformation doesn't happen in the middle of excuses. It doesn't happen if you tell yourself you've done enough, that the years are too heavy, that there's nothing left to change. Transformation begins when you decide to cut off that internal dialogue that has become a perpetual lament and take responsibility for the quality of the days you have left. Seneca put it bluntly, "As long as we live, let us learn to live." Not to give up before our time, not to speak as if death is already sitting in the chair beside us. Every word you speak carries weight. Every thought you allow to grow in your mind draws the line between walking forward with dignity or sitting back, waiting for the end with empty hands. So ask yourself with brutal honesty, how many times have you spoken as if you've already left? How many times have you let the conversation revolve around your own ending without realizing you still have a present worth living? The responsibility is yours. No one's going to come fix your narrative if you don't decide to do it yourself. No excuses. No one else to blame. What you do with your days, your words, your thoughts, that's still in your hands. And as long as you're here, you can still choose to speak of life instead of farewell. That is the most stoic, the most courageous, and the most necessary act you can take, here and now. So far, we've uncovered the invisible chain that quietly pulls so many towards surrender: the fading gaze, the isolation, the neglect of the body, the indifference toward the future, the conversations laced with farewells. Each one of these signs is nothing more than a silent warning that the person is letting themselves slip away before their time. And now, we've arrived at the 8th point, one that many prefer to dismiss as normal, but deep down, it's one of the clearest signs of giving up, the pains that are left untreated. You've seen it more than once. That older person who no longer wants to see a doctor, who downplays their discomfort, who keeps repeating, "What's the point now?" It's not just physical aches, it's excuses dressed up as acceptance. The real danger here isn't the pain itself, it's the quiet decision to do nothing about it. To accept discomfort as inevitable, as if taking care of oneself no longer has any meaning. And that mindset comes at a steep price. It becomes a vicious cycle where the body hurts more, the mind weakens, and the will fades away. There's no room here to sugarcoat the truth. That kind of neglect isn't fate, and it's not age. It's a choice that might feel easier in the moment, but slowly drags you down, stripping away your self-respect and your grip on the life you still have. Pain isn't always avoidable, I know, but the difference lies in how you choose to face it. Will you ignore it, resign yourself, let it consume you? Or will you do what you still can, what's within your control, to ease it, manage it, push back? And I'm not talking about chasing miracle cures. I'm talking about a shift in mindset. About deciding that even if the body falters, your willpower doesn't have to. Because when you stop fighting for your own well-being, you're not just letting yourself fall, you're also sending a message to those around you. I'm no longer worth taking care of. And trust me, that message is more destructive than you realize. Not just for you, but for how others see you and treat you. So I want to give you a concrete, immediate action. Today, right now, identify that pain, that discomfort, that symptom you've been ignoring. Do something about it. Make the appointment, move your body, research, ask questions, take action. Not tomorrow, not when you feel like it, today. Because every day you decide to ignore it, you give up ground. But even more important is the mindset you bring to this. It's not just about going to the doctor or taking a pill. It's about reclaiming the sense that your life is still in your hands. That pain doesn't get the final say. That even as the body ages, you are still the one deciding how to face each battle. It's not comfortable, it's not easy, but it's necessary. The responsibility is yours. No one else is going to fight for your well-being if you're not the first to do it. So get up, face that pain, and prove to yourself that you still have the strength to stand with dignity. That's the difference between living defeated and living stoically. After going through each of these points, it becomes clear that the enemy isn't age. It's not distant children, nor a body that starts to falter. The real enemy lives in the mind that quietly surrenders, in the will that loosens without a sound. And to close this journey, we've reached the 9th point, perhaps the most treacherous of all, a strange, unexpected serenity. It may sound paradoxical. After talking about fatigue, neglect, and resignation, how could calm possibly be a dangerous sign? But take a closer look and you'll understand. There's a kind of serenity that doesn't come from inner peace, but from the bitter acceptance that nothing else is left to hope for. A hollow calm, disguised as wisdom, but at its core, it's silent surrender. The person no longer complains, no longer argues, no longer seeks, but not because they've found fulfillment, because they've stopped resisting. This is where many fall into the deepest self-deception. They say, "I'm at peace, I've done my part. At my age, why bother? I don't want any more trouble." And those phrases sound reasonable, even mature. But beneath them lies something much darker: total resignation. That serenity isn't virtue, it's detachment. It's not acceptance, it's emptiness. And I know how tempting it is to stay there. After so many years, so many blows, so many disappointments, you want to avoid conflict, you crave peace at any cost. But let me be clear, if your peace is built on giving up the chance to live fully, it's not peace. It's indifference. And indifference is the doorway to living death. There's no excuse that justifies it. Not age, not exhaustion, not disappointment. Because as long as you're breathing, you still have something to say, something to do, something to give. Don't fool yourself into thinking serenity means you've figured everything out. Ask yourself if the calm you feel comes from inner work, from freeing yourself of ego and resentment, or if it's really the result of surrendering, of letting go of the reins without a fight. The hardest part of this stage isn't physical pain, or loneliness, or absent children. It's facing the weight of your own choices. Looking in the mirror and asking yourself with brutal honesty, am I truly at peace, or have I simply stopped trying? No one can answer that for you. No one is going to rescue you from that false serenity. Transformation only happens when you stop looking for excuses, when you choose to be uncomfortable, to move, to challenge that supposed calm that's really just an early form of death. Marcus Aurelius knew it when he wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years." Because true serenity doesn't come from surrender, it comes from knowing each day matters, and that every decision, even now, could be the bravest act of your life. So look at yourself honestly. Is your calm the result of growth, or just an excuse to avoid facing what's still left to live? Don't lie to yourself. Time won't wait, and neither should you. If you've made it this far, it's not by chance. Not everyone is willing to sit with these uncomfortable truths, to listen, without looking away, to what most prefer to avoid. Most people choose to distract themselves, to turn the other way, to convince themselves that these signs are about someone else, not them, but not you. You've chosen to listen to every word, to face every symptom, and now you know there's no excuse, no valid justification for ignoring what's happening both inside and around you. What you do with this knowledge is your responsibility, and no one else's. Life doesn't wait. Every day you choose to postpone, to surrender, or to hide behind false serenity is a day you'll never get back. We're not here to offer empty comforts or soothing speeches. At the Stoic Garden, I, Gabriel, created this space for those who understand that real transformation requires courage, for those willing to face life head-on, without sugarcoating, without lies. It doesn't matter if you're 50, 60, 70, or beyond. The decision to reclaim your autonomy, your dignity, and your purpose is in your hands, not in your circumstances, your age, or the attitude of those around you. If this video resonated with you, I want you to leave a comment with your country and write the phrase, "I won't give up before my time." That will be the sign that you're part of this community that refuses to sit back and wait for the end. Subscribe, join this space where we speak plainly, where we don't dress up the truth, and share this content with someone who needs to shake off the indifference and take back control of their life. And don't go just yet. This conversation doesn't end here. I'm leaving 2 videos on the screen that continue this path, because change isn't a one-time event. It's built on small, daily decisions. I'm Gabriel, and here at the Stoic Garden, we'll keep walking together, with strength, with dignity, and with our eyes wide open. I'll see you in the next video.